Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Board of Regents meeting for Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. I want to ask our General Counsel and Secretary of the Board, Karen Buffkin, to call the roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Guay,
Present.
Regent Richard Balducci, Regent Ira Bloom, Student Regent Cheyenne Earlington, Regent Juanita James, Juanita Sophia Japanen.
Present.
Thank you. Regent Richard Porth, Student Regent Luis Sanchez, Regent Ari Santiago,
Here.
Regent Aaron Stewart, Regent Elise Wright, Regent Ted Yang,
There.
FAC Chair Brendan Cunningham, FAC Vice Chair Kalina Sasenker. We have a quorum.
Thank you, General Counsel Buffkin. I'd like to request a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed. All in favor? Opposed? This motion carries. I'd like to turn it over to Chancellor Cheng for comments.
Hey everyone, thank you for everyone in attendance today. My remarks are going to be very brief. Today is a great day to celebrate the achievements of our faculty and the people who have helped so many to get to the point they have reached now. We just spent a good 2 weeks, I believe. Yesterday was yet another commencement for Three Rivers, CT State Three Rivers. But we've spent the past 2 weeks celebrating the graduations and the achievements of our students. I've been very fortunate to be able to attend a few of these commencements in person. And I'll just tell you, we had one graduate who was 18 years old. I met another graduate who was 75 years old. We have seen the profiles of parents and their children walking across the commencement stages together. If that is not uplifting and speaking to the genuine and true power of higher education and public higher education specifically, I don't know what else speaks to it. It's wonderful to see those faces glowing and the pride, the shoulders back, the heads high as they walk across the stage to receive their degrees, to be able to say thank you, to feel the real ebullience and the joy of the families and the friends. And so I just want to, again, congratulate all of our graduates, whether they walked across the stage to receive a certificate or an associate's degree, a graduate degree of any kind. CSCU has done right by them. Everyone who serves them in the classroom, everyone who serves them outside the classroom, we have done right by them. And it is something that I think we can all be incredibly proud of. But the students themselves, of course, deserve the most credit because they are the ones who reach deep in those hard times when the journey was not easy. And as I said in some of my commencement remarks, the families, the friends who were there to, again, cook those comfort meals, to give a hug, to give words of encouragement, they all deserve an incredible amount of credit. But I really want to credit the faculty and the staff who were there with all of our students all along those journeys, whether those journeys took 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, and even longer, because that individual that I mentioned who received her associates at the age of 75. She told me that she started her education journey when she was 25 years old and ultimately had to go through some really challenging experiences through the decades, including physical health and other life circumstances. And that image is always going to stick with me. That vision of her with tears in her eyes and hearing that entire class just roar with joy for her. Again, in all the ups and downs we might go through in higher education, nothing speaks more loudly than that. So today is a day of celebration of our faculty who are there. They're going to be receiving acknowledgments and awards for their hard work, their research, their teaching, and so forth. But they are the ones who directly impact our students. And I really want to thank them. And I want to thank all of us who are there to help this system move forward. So I'll conclude my remarks there, Chair Gway. But again, thank you for everyone for being here today.
Thank you, Chancellor Cheng. I had a chance to attend 5 graduations, and what I saw was a really important life moment for a lot of people. I mean, what we do for people's catalytic, what our faculty, staff, and administrators do for people is catalytic. You know, yesterday sitting with the head of nuclear engineering and looking at all those nuclear engineering grads at Three Rivers, or sitting with Dr. D at Southern, or President Ismaili, or President Maduco. I was also out at Western. Terrific. And at CT State Norwalk. So what we do is fundamentally important. We have a lot of initiatives coming forth, and today we'll speak to those. And we also have awards for our faculty. And I don't think we do enough as a organization to showcase our impact or the success of the people that stay with our organization or go through it. So I'm looking forward, going forward, to doing a better job telling our story writ large. So thanks to all my fellow board members here. I know we're coming up to the end of the academic year while the institutions are winding down with students going home. We have much work to do, and today is one of those days. So we'll go through in a fairly spirited moment. With that, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of March 27th. For a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda. We have, we're looking for the approval. We have the approval for the consent agenda. I'll note that you've been provided a substitute resolution for the item identified in program modifications as B.V8. B.8, I apologize. I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Regent Bloom and Dr. Ainsley Diamond for the presentation of our faculty awards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to report that earlier this month, the board's Academic Committee on Academic and Student Affairs voted to move forward a resolution naming 14 CSCU faculty members as recipients of the annual 2024-25 Board of Regents campus-based and system-wide faculty awards. The awards recognize faculty for excellence in teaching or research. They are given to faculty members who have distinguished themselves as outstanding teachers, promoting instructional improvements and innovation, or are doing exceptional research, scholarly, and/or creative work that informs what they do. Caliber of teaching and research award winners throughout the CSCU system is inspiring. And I'm going to mention that again when I give my report for the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. We'll second that statement. These exceptional faculty focus on student success and these awards provide a means of recognizing their outstanding work. This year, we are joined by the system-wide award winners for each category in person or via WebEx. Board of Regents Teaching Awards are presented to faculty from each of the 4 state universities, Charter Oak, and the 12 community colleges. System-wide awards are selected from among the institutional awardees. 2 system-wide adjunct faculty teaching awards are given to recognize part-time faculty service throughout the CSU system, faculty who are throughout the system who have distinguished themselves as outstanding teachers. I think we know many sections are taught by adjunct faculty. Board of Regents Research Awards are presented to faculty from Central, Eastern, Southern, and Western Connecticut State Universities, and 1 system-wide research award is given to the individual who best exemplifies high-quality research among the nominees. Board of Regents Scholarly Excellence Awards recognize community college faculty who conduct high-quality scholarly work or exemplary creative activity. 1 system-wide awardee is selected from among these outstanding faculty. Before we hear more about the campus-based winners and the system awardees, I need to mention the extraordinary work of colleagues who make granting these awards possible. First, thank you to the staff and academic affairs at the system office who manage the puzzle of paperwork and correspondence of the process. Then there are members of various selection committees who reviewed countless nomination letters and letters of support from colleagues and alumni. Having served on such committees in prior incarnations, this is a very careful and extraordinary amount of work and commitment shown by the people on these committees. These awards could not be granted without their commitment to the importance of this recognition. Members of these committees are all previous award recipients. Dr. Ainsley Diamond of our Academic Affairs Office will now present the awardees in each award category. Dr. Diamond?
What a wonderful way to start our meeting today. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to honor our faculty award recipients and recognize their outstanding scholarly work. Our CSCU faculty are committed to their institutions and dedicated to mentoring our students while engaging in teaching and state-of-the-art research. Their efforts contribute to student success and have a profound impact on the entire CSCU community. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee recommends to the full board the following 2024-2025 Board of Regents Teaching and Research Award recipients. The campus-based Board of Regents Teaching Awards for the CSCU, for the Connecticut State Universities are Dr. DeCorte Rogers Tong, who is an Associate Professor of Accounting at Central Connecticut State University, Dr. Lori Bonio, who is an Associate Professor of Counseling and School Psychology at Southern Connecticut State University, and Dr. Jessica Schofield, Assistant Professor of Social Sciences at Western Connecticut State University. And the recipient of the system-wide Board of Regents Teaching Award for the Connecticut State Universities is Dr. Jessica Schofield, the Assistant Professor of Social Sciences at Western Connecticut State University. Dr. Schofield exhibits an enduring commitment to curricular advancement and student success. As an instructor of political science for over 5 years, she has conducted outstanding instructional advancement at WestConn. A scholar of international relations with a geographic focus on African politics, Dr. Schofield brought a much-needed focus on gender and human rights to the Western political science program in the fall of 2020. In the wake of international protests for racial justice after the murder of George Floyd, WestConn students demanded more courses that tackled race and racism in culture and politics. In her first semester, Dr. Schofield addressed this call by offering in her first semester a faculty-developed study called Social Justice Activism that explored movements in justice in America and the reverberations across the globe. Her offer to construct a new course at an unfamiliar university speaks to Dr. Schofield's desire to apply her intellectual insights to the major issues of the day and to help students gain skills in understanding current events and develop informed opinions about world politics. Again, congratulations, Professor Schofield. Next is the campus-based Board of Regents Teaching Award for CT State Community College. And the nominees are Dr. Adolfo Sanchez Blanco, Assistant Professor in Arts and Humanities at CT State Capitol. We have Dr. Arlan Cito, who is an Associate Professor of Ophthalmic Design and Dispensing in Health Careers at CT State Middlesex, and Professor Tracy Smith, Associate Professor in Early Childhood Education at CT State Northwestern. And the recipient of the system-wide Board of Regents Teaching Award for CT State Community College is Dr. Adolfo Sanchez Blanco, Assistant Professor in Arts and Humanities, CT State Capitol. And I believe he is joining us virtually. Professor Sanchez Blanco is a highly skilled, enthusiastic, and dedicated educator who brings tremendous energy to the classroom. He uses innovative teaching techniques, including props, models, debates, discussion, humor, and even social media to engage and inspire his students. His passion for teaching is evident in every interaction, and his students consistently rate him highly in all categories, praising his ability to make learning both effective and enjoyable. When the college transitioned to remote learning during the pandemic, Adolfo demonstrated exceptional adaptability and creativity as he developed high-quality resources for teaching Bio 1005 labs online, which he generously shared with other instructors. These online labs, based on the existing lab manual, were far superior to many alternatives, ensuring students still received a valuable learning experience. In addition, Adolfo leveraged his expertise in videography to create engaging TikToks and Instagram videos of lab experiments and filmed under the microscope with professional level precision. These videos gained widespread popularity, earning him hundreds of thousands of followers and establishing him as a successful creator on both platforms. Congratulations, Professor Sanchez Blanco. And now, campus-based Board of Regents Research Award recipients for Connecticut State Universities are Dr. Mohammed Majoub, who is an Associate Professor of Engineering at Central Connecticut State University, Dr. Scott Moore, Associate Professor of History at Eastern Connecticut State University, and Dr. Carlos Sansabaz Lopez, Associate Professor of Biology at Western Connecticut State University. And the recipient of the system-wide Board of Regents Research Award for the Connecticut State Universities is Dr. Carlos Sansabaz Lopez, Associate Professor of Biology from Western Connecticut State University. Dr. Santibanez Lopez joined the biology department at Western Connecticut State University in January of 2021 and has proven himself as a distinguished scientist specializing in the evolutionary diversification of venomous scorpions and spiders. I'm glad you have your job and I do not have it, sir. He uses advanced computational and genetic techniques to explore how adaptations like venom arise from evolution and affect the diversity of life on Earth. Dr. Santibanez Lopez is an expert, that's arachnologist, with an extraordinary publication record and conducts research which is widely recognized externally and has made significant impacts on his field. Born and raised in Mexico, he's a proud member of the Hispanic community who brings a valuable and unique perspective to the field of biology. As someone from a historically underrepresented group, he He is an outstanding recipient of the research track record and ongoing potential to make significant contributions to the field. Congratulations, Dr. Santibanez Lopez. Next, the nominee for the campus-based and system-wide Board of Regents Scholarly Excellence Award recipient for the CT State College is Denise Cortegiano, who is an associate professor of nursing at CT State Three Rivers, who is joining us virtually. As an associate professor of nursing at CT State Three Rivers, Denise has displayed exceptional dedication to the field of nursing education. She holds the much-needed knowledge base as both an accomplished nurse educator in the registered nurse program, as well as vast experience as a seasoned educator within the LPN arena. This, combined with her passion and excitement for nursing, made her uniquely qualified to build the new LPN program, the first at CT State. Denise has navigated the complexities of curriculum design, a complex feasibility study, and the goal of student engagement and success with remarkable insight and efficiency. This required months of detail-oriented research, as well as multidisciplinary, meetings. This also required the knowledge of and ability to interact with many community healthcare partners. Beyond program development, Denise consistently integrated cutting-edge research into the curriculum, ensuring students are equipped with both practical skills as well as latest evidence-based practices. Her knowledge of the RN program allowed for planning for a future pathway for these LPN students to continue their education, and innovative, important to the mission of CT State. Denise's passion for education is matched only by a genuine commitment to student development, which has a profound impact on the development of this program. Congratulations, Denise. And finally, the Board of Regents would also like to congratulate all of this year's campus-based adjunct faculty teaching award nominees. Alana Ledford from Central Connecticut State University, Dr. William Perez from CT State Capitol, Nick Sinatra from CT State Gateway, and Dr. Philip Piazza from Southern Connecticut State University. And the two system-wide Board of Regents Adjunct Faculty Teaching Award recipients are Nick Sinatra from CT State Gateway and Alana Ledford from Central Connecticut State University. First, Nick Sinatra exemplifies the qualities of an outstanding educator with a teaching approach that is both innovative and highly effective, fostering a dynamic and inclusive learning environment that has had a profound impact on student success. Nick's use of small group work is a primary method of instruction is particularly commendable. This collaborative approach ensures that every student is actively engaged in the learning process. By working together, students not only reinforce their understanding of material, but also develop crucial communication and problem-solving skills. The mutual respect between Nick and his students is palpable. He values their contributions and makes them feel comfortable participating, which translates to an atmosphere where students are excited to learn and contribute. In addition, Nick has also gone above and beyond the expectations of a part-time faculty member by providing feedback and support for the current curricular efforts to redesign the calculus pathway math courses, and was a critical contributor to CT State's second redesign of the Stats 1200 implementation, meeting with the full-time faculty course leader near bi-weekly to offer feedback, suggestions, and gain clarity on the learning goals for certain assignments. And next, Alana Ledford from Central Connecticut State University. Professor Ledford has developed a dynamic student-centered approach to teaching managerial communication. emphasizing practical skills relevant to today's workplace. Her teaching philosophy is rooted in the idea of creating a welcoming classroom environment that fosters psychological safety, encouraging students to participate actively and engage with challenging material. She utilizes experiential learning with assignments that mirror real-world communication scenarios, weekly writing assignments, and corporate policy creation exercises. Her incorporation of a final in-person evaluation meeting is another unique practice. In these sessions, students review their initial goals, discuss achievements, and receive personalized feedback, mirroring corporate performance reviews and preparing students for professional evaluations. This creative instructional approach was presented at the Association for Business Communication International Conference, where her AI-focused corporate policy assignment was featured in the My Favorite Assignment session and later published, showcasing her commitment to both her students and the broader teaching community. Student feedback overwhelmingly reflects her effectiveness, with comments noting that Professor Ledford makes the class content easy to understand while also challenging us to think about how to apply it to the real world, and describing her as the best professor I've ever had. Course evaluations consistently rate her teaching as perfect or near perfect scores across categories such as organization, clarity, fairness, and student interest. Please help me congratulate all of our 2024-2025 Board of Regents Faculty Award recipients. Back to you, Regent Bloom.
Thank you, Dr. Diamond. All of the people, all the faculty have made important contributions to CSCU. The work to bring out the best in CSCU students and make significant contributions to their academic disciplines, institutions. Impact of these faculty on their students often lasts for the lifetime of the students. If you think back, think of the professors that you've had who you still think about. My age, that's a long time. And I still can remember faculty members when I was an undergraduate and later when I was in law school who made a real impact on my life. So this is really important work that leaves long traces. These are examples of selfless dedication and inspire all of us. Once again, please join in congratulating all our faculty award winners. They've earned it. Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to congratulate also Professor Schofeld, Professors Sanchez Banez, Professor Santabanez Lopez, Professor Corta Giano, Professor Sinatra, Professor Ledford. Well done. We're proud of you. I know there's a host of other willing and capable people who could also get this award in our system. We're blessed to have so many, but a few get the award. So thank you so much. I'd like to move to the next item on our agenda, which is the annual report of our Student Advisory Committee. We have Student Regents Santiago and Earlington who will present this, and graduation ceremonies were quite good. I missed them and I missed the after party, but I heard it was quite good also. So the floor is yours, and I want to acknowledge your service this year on the board. It's appreciated. Your voice is strong. Continue it in other venues, but we certainly appreciated it here. Thank you.
Perfect. First off, I want to start by thanking the board This will be like one of my last presentations here, so I want to take some time aside and thank everyone here. I came in as a very young, impressionable young guy. Didn't really know what I got myself into to begin with. A little bit crazy to begin with, right? A lot of fastballs being thrown at me, but so far this experience has been life-changing. I'm really thankful for everyone for, you know, treating me like a regular person. You know, you have this perspective of, you know, the Board of Regents being this big board, you know, the leaders of the whole system, 12 community colleges, 4 state universities, right? Not being a one, but at the end of the day, they're just humans like everyone else, right? And I just wanted to highlight that each and every single one of you, including the presidents, including each of my peers, treating me like a person, treating me like a peer, and I'm really appreciative of that. So this has been, it opened my perspective to what's possible for me. It gave me the confidence needed to be able to accomplish the goals that I wanted. So big thank you. But I don't want to take more time. I also wanted to thank faculty, you know, being a student, going through the community college, and then going through a state university. You guys are the ones that define the experience for a lot of students. And if I'm being quite honest, you guys make the most impact on like students' lives, right? And I had the pleasure to have great faculty throughout my 4 years and throughout the institution. So it's been great. I'm really grateful for the system and everything that has brought to my life and the opportunity. So we'll get started.
Thank you.
So first, we wanted to ensure this year that it was our first year truly being together with a new advisor. We wanted to make sure that we were rebuilding and engaging with each of the campuses across, right? We wanted to make sure that the feedback loop from the student voices to the board was clear and concise, and years moving forward, the communications between the students and the board is very clear, and we're able to take into account a lot of the opinions and the struggles the students are facing across the campuses. So a big push this year, me being in charge along with Cheyenne, was to reestablish that structure, right? That culture, and make sure that we align the whole group with the goals and what we wanted to accomplish throughout the academic year. We wanted to position the Student Advisory Committee for a long-term impact. So all the effort that when I started as a vice chair, and then with Alex, my first year, then Carla, and now Cheyenne, we wanted to make sure that all those efforts and all that the time and effort that we put into this remain throughout the years, right? So that was one of the big focuses this year, to make sure that we continue building from the foundation that we've built and continue growing. So we'll see that throughout this presentation. So next slide. So like we talked about, this year was huge for reset and realignment. We wanted to make sure the leadership within the Student Advisory Committee aligned with the voices of the students. So we wanted to clarify the leadership roles, the expectations. After COVID, there was a big decline of student involvement across all institutions, unfortunately. It seems like, as I'm a senior now, and when I started, it was like the first year out of COVID, student involvement is increasing. Students want to get more involved. And if I'm being quite honest, the more students get involved, the more opportunities that open up for them later on, and they're able to build leadership skills that otherwise wouldn't be available if they didn't get involved with campuses. So that was a big focus this year, you know, showcasing the value with getting involved with the university, getting involved for the change. We wanted to strengthen the collaboration between the student activity directors. They play an essential role across the whole system. You know, they provide campus activities for each of the institutions. So we wanted to make sure we were aligned with them to make sure that whatever issue the students were having was taken into account by the student activity director, who might be able to change some things around. We want to promote accountability and mutual respect. So in past years, we have encountered, you know, the board tends to get, there's a lot of moving cogs throughout the board. So people can get very emotional about certain situations, and we had instances where accountability and mutual respect wasn't being or taken into account. So we wanted to change it. We wanted to make sure that we're being cordial, right? We can disagree, but we want to make sure that there's the mutual respect between each other and accountability to hold each other accountable. And we also wanted to develop a more unified student advisory committee. We wanted to come together to make sure that we're a well-oiled machine. So we're able to accomplish what the goal of the students is during that year. So that kind of has been the shift and the focus with the student advisory committee and where our leadership has been focusing this year.
Good morning, everyone. Similar to Luis, this is my last Board of Regents meeting as well. I graduated last week, Thursday, from CT State as Nuntuck, and I'll be transferring to UConn Stanford in the fall. I just want to express my gratitude and my thanks to you all. I appreciate you all beyond words. So with that being said, we're going to talk about some of our great highlights and accomplishments. So this past semester, Luis and I were tasked with a couple big feats regarding engagement in our subcommittee initiatives. So we met with our SGA representatives across the CSCU system. We were able to strengthen the communication between SAC and our local SGAs because we know in the past it wasn't as strong, but I feel as though moving forward, we have a well-oiled machine when it comes to SAC. We were able to gather feedback on student priorities, their concerns, as well as, campus-specific issues around the system. And we also promoted awareness of SAC's role in system-wide advocacy efforts. During our SAC meeting, so many of our students would ask us, well, I didn't know what SAC was until I was approached. And I feel as though, if you ask them now, they're going to give you a different answer, which is important. Moreover, we had two subcommittees. So I led bylaws and Luis led the surveys. So with our bylaws, we were able to review and revise our governing documents for our group. And Luis was able to develop a comprehensive survey to capture student voices across all of our campuses. And the results, once our students take the survey, will inform SAC's priorities and recommendations to our system leadership. Next slide, please. So more specifically, bylaws. So with our new and updated bylaws, we revised the definition of quorum to reflect the active participation across our CSCU system, and we're able to simplify the language. We also incorporated updates to align with the new structure of CT State as a single accredited institution, seeing that CT Technical College is a thing of the past. And we also had a member onboarding process. We formalized a more structured onboarding process for our new SAC members to come. Next slide, please.
I'm back. So throughout the academic year, we worked very diligently. Previous years, the student advisory committee was meeting once a month. We tried changing that. We tried meeting every 2 weeks. To make sure that we're engaging with our students. And then I'll talk a little bit about the student survey. If you guys remember the beginning of the year, I came in with this grandiose idea of like, hey, we want to do the student survey. I think it's going to be great. But we realized that it's a huge undertaking, right? If we're trying to push out a system-wide survey, that's not going to get, if I'm being quite realistic, I like to be naively positive sometimes, but I'm also realistic and I have to realize that if we want to do a very comprehensive system-wide survey, it's gonna take some more time to develop it, right? So what we focused more this year was setting up the, like I said, the foundation. So next leadership comes in, they'll have a detailed step-by-step of what the next procedure would be, and they can continue the deployment of this survey and then create the recommendations from the board. So as this, throughout the year, we developed a subcommittee, like Cheyenne mentioned previously. Students were very, very helpful. So students representatives across the system sat down, identify a lot of the recurring patterns across their campuses. And that's kind of where we shifted our focus, right? We realized that each campus is drastically different from another. Different student population, different student size, different demographics. So we wanted to be very broad when it came to a lot of our focus areas. So we focus on 3 focus areas: academic success and accessibility, campus and digital infrastructure, and financial accessibility and system affordability. These were the 3 key areas that I would say every student across the institutions kind of highlighted. Um, they want to make sure that they have uh, resources like advisory, tutoring, library hours accessible, which they are in most of the instances, but there's still little things that could be improved. They want to have access to courses, flexibility in scheduling. We wanted to see where we are as a system regarding that from a student perspective, right? So that's kind of where we focus on. Support students transitioning between institutions within the system. So the big initiative was done at the beginning of the year for the transferring process between the institutions. We wanted to see where we are with that from the student perspective as well. Campus and digital infrastructure, right? Especially with artificial intelligence, kind of like part of my major. It's gonna change every industry drastically, right? So I think as an institution and as a system, um, we should try to remain as invest as much as we can in this evolving technology. And students agree with that. But for that, they want to make sure that the physical facilities across the campus are accessible. For injured students, we hear a couple of stories from students um, that they didn't have access after they got hurt. A couple of the elevators weren't working certain hours, so we added that here. Um, they want to have access to reliable technology, Wi-Fi, online platforms, and digital tools. So I think this is a big area of improvement as well. The campus Wi-Fi across some of the schools across the system. We want to see what students out of that and see if we can improve upon that. And then as well as access to relevant technology, right? So artificial intelligence takes a lot of energy and power and computing power. So having access to those technologies are going to be vital moving forward. And then finally, financial accessibility and system affordability. Um, a more centralized access to financial aid, scholarships, and funding opportunities for students were a lot of the concerned students' voice, as well as affordability of education within the CCSU system. Um, they want CCSUs to remain affordable for them. As many, I know, majority of people when I was in community college worked a full-time job and studied full-time. A lot of them, and same thing at Central. A lot of them are commuters. A lot of them work 2, 3 part-time jobs on top of doing school. So um, also they can fund their education, right? So we got to take that into account. And then navigating tuition, building financial processes. Um, College can be a very complex undertaking for a lot of students, especially if they have a lot of responsibilities. So we wanted to make sure and survey where students are regarding this. So this was all from student voices and from students. We kind of compiled 3 key areas and we shifted our focus towards that. And then we created a sheet. There's a lot more steps that goes into developing the survey system wide, but we have a comprehensive sheet that we're gonna delay to the next cohort of student leaders, so they can continue this potentially if they want to, this task.
Next slide, please. So looking ahead, Luis and I are proudly passing the torch to our upcoming chair and vice chair for the upcoming semester coming this fall. So regarding the 2025-2026 academic year, we are going to have our SAC leadership election. We're going to initiate the recruitment process for SAC leadership. And so far, we secured some interest from some candidates, 2 from CT State, as well as 1 from our CSCU universities. Election should be held in early fall 2025, allowing time for a smooth transition. Moreover, we're going to have leadership training and onboarding for our students. We have a plan set in place to support incoming leaders through an orientation with our lovely bylaws and responsibilities, as well as a SAC leadership retreat.
And to finalize, we want to make sure that our everyone's efforts continues building upon each other. So, we'll distribute the necessary steps with the survey to the following leadership group. Um, and we'll also make sure that we'll coordinate the distribution, potentially fall 2025 or spring, depending of how much work and effort they're able to put in. Um, as well as we'll make sure that the results from the Student Advisory Committee survey uh, are provided to the board and made into recommendations. So the board can see those recommendations and move accordingly. So it was a busy year, a lot of learning. I think for me, this has been a great experience. I'm really appreciative for this opportunity. So with that being said, that's all we have for you guys. So thank you.
Thank you for what you do for us. You're a real gift to have around our table to get the perspectives of the students. And what advice would you give the next two representatives coming in to be impactful with us and with your advisory council also? Because it's a bi-directional relationship, right? What advice are you going to give them, or would you give them?
There's a lot of stakeholders within the board, right? The faculty, staff, leadership, administration. I would say trust your judgment, right? I think if you're able to critically think and you go through education and you develop that critical thinking, I would say like believe in yourself and the decisions you're making. Um, don't get persuaded by anyone. Like don't, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces, so people are gonna try not necessarily pushing to a certain direction, but um, it's the name of the game, right? So I would say remain positive, feel all perspectives, and critically think every decision you make. So, guys.
For me, I would say, as a student at the end of the day, regardless, find your balance, maintain your balance. Academics will always come first. Lean on your committee members for help. You don't have to suffer in silence. And my other remark would be know that you have a seat at the table for a reason and you're here for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
As a follow-up question, what advice would you give us, the regents, in terms of making the student regents' experience more productive and helpful?
I mean, in the last, it's been 3 years since I started as a student leader from the community college and now state university, and the board has shifted a lot. But I would say, um, there's a lot of information being thrown at the student regents from all sides, right? Big decisions to be taken. I would say like help them walk through the information, um, allow them to see all sides, and as well as there. I mean, I think I was put in a unique position where like I don't mind talking, I don't mind expressing myself and letting people know what I think. So uh, also making them feel comfortable enough in a space where they can voice their opinion. I think that's big. Overall, my experience, like I said in the beginning, like a regular person, there was no like, hey, I'm this leadership role. You're a student. No, everyone treated me with respect, and I think that should continue.
For me, I would say just remember to keep students first. We all were a student at some point in life, and Luis and I are current students, but keep students first because we're here for the students at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to turn to our Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Committee Chair Bloom, I believe you have a brief report from the Academic and Student Affairs Committee for the April and May this month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a brief report. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee met on April 4th and May 9th. Present at both meetings with the committee chair were Regents Juanita James and Rick Porth, as well as Professor Kalina Sasenker. We thank the board members for their earlier approval today of the consent agenda. Chair Gay, I would like to highlight several items of interest regarding the ASA items just approved at the meeting. These accomplishments, again, are only possible with the extensive and collaborative work of the provosts, their deans, and the faculty in support of our students and students' aspirations. Boards approved earlier today recognize the accomplishments of our faculty and our students. Any of the pages in today's lengthy agenda highlight much of this individual work. Dr. Diamond spoke of many of these, but I would urge other board members to look through the pages to see exactly the kinds of research and other activities that are being undertaken by the faculty. This is important work, and it doesn't get highlighted enough. As the number of program approvals, program modifications, and program discontinuances on the agenda today demonstrate, CSCU courses of study are not static. They are evolving to better meet the needs and aspirations of our students and to advance Connecticut's economic development. They include new offerings and changes to majors, minors, and certificates at the master's, baccalaureate, and associate degree levels. They involve a broad array of disciplines and professions, including teacher education, IT, and environmental studies, among many. Some of these work is affected by the quality of the campus digital infrastructure, which Louise talked about just a few minutes ago. This is an important matter in advancing our work. Changes such as these may involve program requirements, including adjustments to meet changes in state regulations, as happened with the teacher education programs, or changes in accreditor requirements, or being made to offer greater flexibility and opportunity for our students. Some of the changes involve course modalities, a fancy word to describe how courses are offered, which now include on-ground, traditional in-person, hybrid, high flex, and online, which in turn may be offered synchronously or asynchronously. There are a wide variety in the methods now in which courses can be offered. Geography is no longer necessarily the prime determinant of student choice. Some of the approved changes enable non-traditional approaches intended to expedite student progress toward a CSCU degree, including dual and concurrent enrollment involving high school students earning college credits for CT State and several of our universities, and at a higher level, accelerated upper level undergraduates simultaneously earning credits toward a master's degree, such as Central's accelerated track leading to its MS in computer information technology degrees. These are all changes that enable the students to make greater progress in their academic careers. Challenges on the academic and student affairs front include the impact of policy and funding changes, including federal financial aid, that are emerging from the federal government. These are known unknowns, as former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld would have labeled them. The impact on financial accessibility and affordability, which Louise had talked about, is one of the unknowns at this point. So we have to keep, I think, careful tabs on what is happening. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to present the report.
Thank you, Regent Bloom. Committee Chair Wright, I understand you have some brief remarks for us for the Audit Committee.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was provided with an audit briefing for an update on some of the outstanding audit issues. And so management was there, and we also had the firms representing our outside auditors there. With respect to the updates, the management update that came from Annette Pavone, who's the system controller, and the APA audit update, we received an update from Cameron Liston. With respect to the management update, during the financial audit, Grant Thornton identified a material weakness in our financial reporting. Some of our issues were related to process deficiencies and inadequate and untimely financial reporting, which in at least one case affected another state agency in developing its report. Our new system controller, Annette Pavone, presented a plan to remediate the weakness to avoid these issues happening again. Some issues were driven by the unplanned departure of our former controller, a replacement of an old system, and a change in how we account for fringe benefits. Remediation includes some actions that are already in progress. We will be increasing the CSCU system office accounting staff by 2 full-time employees, and we're looking for talent with CPA expertise. The way I think about it, somebody who speaks accounting and they understand the issues. We have also identified an internal talent who has accounting experience who has been helpful in our addressing some of the outstanding issues. There will be increased planning and communication among the CSCU system office and institutional controllers, which will include pulling the controllers together at least once or twice a month. We will be hiring a controller for CT State, and Annette Pavone will be overseeing audit issues for a CT State until a controller is hired. Annette has developed and disseminated detailed checklists, which will include specific tasks and deliverables, identifying who is responsible for the work and date by which the work and the review will be completed. In that way, we're memorializing the work so that regardless of turnover, we have a record of the work that needs to be completed and a deliverable timeline. We'll be expanding responsibilities to include more financial report review and analysis. And so that was sort of a summary. I think I want to give kudos to the team for doing quite a bit of work in the short time that they've been addressing these issues. With respect to the audits, statewide single audit at federal level, 7 audit findings related to student financial assistance implicating CT State, Central, and Eastern, and findings fell into the following category: cash management, excess cash, direct loan reconciliations, eligibility, cost of attendance, and inaccurate calculations, others notifying students of direct loan disbursement, and evidence of services provided by adjunct faculty and non-credit lecturers at CT State. And I should reinforce that this was related to how we accounted for these lectures during COVID. So it was pretty challenging. We also received a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance related to inadequate financial reporting process and failure to complete the annual comprehensive financial report on time. With respect to the legislation changes or proposed legislation changes, Cameron Liston, who is our compliance officer, provided an update on the proposed House Bill 6887, the Higher Education Accountability Bill. The Connecticut General Assembly is considering HB 6887. It's an act concerning higher education, management, and fiscal accountability. The bill requires that CSCU adopt P-card state vehicle use and executive residency requirement policies by January 2026. CSCU recently adopted a P-card policy consistent with the proposed bill that essentially adopts procedures and controls around such areas as P-card usage and system-wide education. The bill requires CSCU to name a compliance officer with internal audit responsibility by January 2026. And in November 2025, CSCU established the System-Wide Office of Compliance. I think that's November 2024.
Correct.
Yeah, I can't do it. The Office of Compliance is revising the internal audit manual and identifying how to leverage resources, including existing investigative and training resources, to establish an audit function. This internal audit function will provide auditing and consulting services to assist management in the maintenance of a strong control environment. A new training regime will be developed to support compliance with this bill and other requirements. And then Office of Compliance established a policy committee with representatives across the system to provide a venue for policy development, review, and presentation to the Board of Regents. This committee will allow CSCU to promptly and effectively respond to changes in state or federal law, business priorities, and risks identified through internal and external audits. And again, I just want to thank the staff and management for sort of addressing these issues so quickly. I know this was a tough year, but I think particularly in the work that management did in compliance, legal, and with Annette, our new controller. I was very impressed with the amount of work they did and policies they have implemented in a very short time frame.
Thank you, Audit Chair Wright. Any questions? I'd like to thank you for your hard work and interfacing with CFO Blanchard and our compliance team, Cameron and Karen Buffkin. Continue to keep us informed going forward in the meetings, because as the oversight body for the system, we really need to understand these issues as they get resolved, and more importantly, as we set up for the future. Finance and Infrastructure Chair Rich Balducci, I understand you have a report and also 3 items requiring action and 1 informational item for us today.
Okay, I'm not sure those numbers are exactly in agreement, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. The Finance and Infrastructure Committee met on May 14th. We actually have 3 action items. 1 we removed. The committee decided to remove it in conjunction with the chairman decided that we bring it before you today as an information item, and we can act on it if the committee so feels today is good. Otherwise, we'll end up taking action item on it in June. The 2 action items we have, and I don't know, is Dr. Elmore and Dr. King in here, just in case? We have 2 approvals, okay, naming approvals, and I thought instead of just naming them, maybe we can get just a brief reason as to why on each one. The first is that Eastern Connecticut State gift led to the naming of the Holowati Family Field. And is Dr. Elmore here just to make a comment or 2 on that?
He is online.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, could you just briefly tell us so the members understand exactly what's happening and why? It's a great opportunity for the Holowati family and certainly for Coach Holowati, but I thought it'd be nice if you maybe made a comment or 2 about it.
Certainly, there I am. I think I may be on
You
camera
are.
now. Thank you very much, Committee Chair Balducci, and to members of the board. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We're very pleased to present to the board for consideration this proposal that we name our baseball field at Eastern, the Holowati Family Field, to recognize Coach Holowati's long and distinguished tenure as coach of Eastern's baseball team. He served as head baseball coach from 1969 to 2013. He is among the winningest coaches in all of NCAA Division III history. And the Warriors claimed 4 national championships and 12 College World Series appearances during his tenure. And Coach Holowati has been named to a number of Halls of Fame, baseball Halls of Fame. And we were approached in the fall by a number of baseball alumni who wanted to honor and recognize their former coach. And so they began to raise some money in support of that effort. In gifts and commitments were over $150,000 from 89 donors and climbing as we speak. So The University Senate voted unanimously in March to approve this naming. It was advanced to the Finance Committee at its last meeting, and we're pleased to now bring it before you today. Thank you, and I can answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. I would therefore, are there any questions?
Grim, do you want to add anything? You need a, you need a,
As a new president, you sort of learn about individuals who've made significant contributions to the university, and Coach Halawadi is one of those people. The outpouring of support from alums is pretty incredible, and we are really looking forward to honoring him in the manner that I think he should be honored. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
we look forward to being there, schedules permitting, and I want to thank Dr. Elmore, who runs our institutional advancement at Eastern, who's done a real nice job shepherding this through our system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that, I would move that at Eastern Connecticut State, naming of the Halawadi Family Field. Is there a second? Second. Looks like we've had discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving along to the second item, Southern Connecticut's gift of naming the Rob Parker Press Box. And is Dr. Keen here? Dr. King, if you would like to make a few brief comments about this, it would be important, I think, to members understand it. That's pretty brief.
I can go ahead and speak on.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to present Rob Parker, who was an illustrious alum, for this naming opportunity. He's simply an alum that came back and saw the need of our scholars and wanted to contribute in some sort of way. He is American sports writer for WXYZ TV and a former contributor to Fox Sports' #1 show, Skip and Shannon, Undisputed. He is currently co-host of The Odd Couple on Fox Sports Radio with Kelvin Washington, and he has an illustrious career in the sports industry. He was the first African-American sports columnist at the Detroit Free Press and the first African-American general sports columnist at Newsday in New York. He has also written for the Detroit Times, Leader, and the Daily News in New York and the Cincinnati Enquirer. And he brings the passion and the commitment to our great institution.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. So with that, I make a motion that at Southern Connecticut State, the press box be named the Rob Parker Press Box. Is there a second? Second, thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. Moving right along, the third item that we would or could vote on is the fund balance policy, but we'll get to that in a moment. We have two information items. One on the reserve system, which I'm going to turn over to Lloyd, and the second on the social impact partnership, which Chris Rivers will discuss shortly. So with that, Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman Balducci, and good morning, Regents. I'll first call for the slides on the System Reserves Report, which is slide 4 rather, Sam, of my presentation. Come back to the fund balance policy. Is that correct, Chairman Balducci?
Yes.
Sam, you want to go to slide 4, please? So, good morning again. We presented this deck on this report on our system reserves at the May 14th Finance and Infrastructure Committee meeting, largely because there was some concern about elevated reserves here across the system. And so what this report will do is show you the level of those reserves and describe the nature of those reserves. On the slide now, you'll see that according to our financial statements from FY24, which ended on June 30 of 2024, we had $635 million worth of unrestricted net position. Now, when we talk about reserves, we're talking about the unrestricted net position. The unrestricted net position is not a measure of cash per se, but a measure of assets minus liabilities, and also dealing with the deferred inflows and outflows. So it's a year-end report that often doesn't come to us until we are producing our financial statements, our audited financial statements. But as we talk about correcting some of these challenges, when we talk about the fund balance policy, we'll talk about some additional reporting and monitoring associated with these reserves so that we can catch them before year end. But what you see on the slide is a distinction in the pie chart, the distinction between designated reserves in the blue section and undesignated reserves in the yellow section. In the blue section, designated reserves amount to about $358 million. And those are reserves that have been set aside for specific purposes. I'll talk more about that here in a minute. The undesignated reserves across the system amount to $275 million. That refers to reserves that have not been set aside for specific reasons. But we will talk in a minute about what undesignated reserves ought to be as we go forward within the context of implementing a new fund balance policy. Next slide, please. Now, let me clarify some language. When I say fund balance, I do mean reserves as well when it comes to the unrestricted funds, the unrestricted net position. So this slide shows the reasons for the growth in our reserves, starting with the fact that we went through a pandemic. Federal government stepped in to help all institutions across the nation during that pandemic. And at least here at CSCU, we received from FY21 to the current day, or to the last fiscal year, over $550 million in ARPA funds, in federal government funds. So this is one of the reasons why we saw a lot of reserves stocked up. We knew that the ARPA funds would not last forever. So we were regularly told that these dollars will not last forever. Plan for these dollars to run out at some period in time. And that planning requires the presidents of their respective institutions to be smart about how they set aside funds for a day when these ARPA dollars will disappear. That day has come. There are no more ARPA dollars. And so the reserves that we have set aside for this day, we will start to use, and we'll talk about that later in this presentation. The next reason for the increase in reserves is the cost savings. Clearly, because of the pandemic and because of concerns about spending across our system, we've been asked to reduce our spending. And we've been reducing our spending for a few years now. And as a result, you'll see that we have achieved over $100 million in expenditure savings over the past few years. That certainly contributes. When you decrease your spending and the state legislature comes in and restores some of that spending, more revenue, fewer expenditures creates larger surpluses. Larger surpluses add to the reserve fund. Another reason, and this is why we're proposing a new draft fund balance policy, is the fact that the current fund balance policy has asked us to set aside, has asked all of our institutions to set aside what I believe to be too much, more than we have needed. Let me explain. One element of the current fund balance policy asks the universities to set aside from 5 to 7% of their operational expenses in designated funds, in reserves. I didn't mean to say designated. It will be undesignated. But the point here is the amount, 5 to 7%, adds up to $38 to $54 million. Our requirement every year is about $30 million for debt service. That may change, that may wane from 27 in one year to 32 in another, but it's essentially on average $30 million per year. So you'll see that the 5 to 7% number has set aside a large amount of money that's more than we needed. Moreover, we have, because of that policy, has set the universities and the colleges have set aside more than was necessary. And it's the universities that are relevant for debt service. CT State and Charter Oak do not participate in our debt payments. But because of this policy, we have transferred more funds to the central office, to the system office, than was necessary. The process by which we make debt payments is to take transfers from the universities to system office, and then we deposit those transfers into what we call a STIF account, short-term investment fund. This is an account that's held at the state controller's office, and that, or excuse me, at the treasury's office, and then the treasury will make the payment to CHIFA. CHIFA is our lending agent, a government agency here in Connecticut responsible for bonding for educational facilities across the state. So finally, the final reason for reserve growth, at least at our community college, is the consolidation of the 12 colleges into a single CT State budget. As was mentioned by Chair Wright, we are still working through some of the details and the operational aspects of finance and reporting within the context of the consolidation. We continue to work with CT State to improve these processes, and it's a hell of a challenge. It's a big challenge. I know President Maduko works daily to build his organization. I work with his CFO to try to get the financing and the accounting for those finances straight. But overall, these are the reasons for our growth in reserves. Next slide, please. This slide shows what those reserves look like at, I'm sorry, previous slide. Back, there you go. So these are the institutional reserves. We have 6 institutions. The universities are across the top. The 2 colleges are at the bottom. The blue represents designated funds. These are funds that either the board policy has asked us to set aside or institutional presidents have chosen to set aside. The yellow, of course, represents undesignated reserves. See on the bottom, the one pie chart that shows a lot of yellow, that's CT State. CT State has its own policy about reserves, and most of its reserves are undesignated. They only designate for a very few purposes, and so most of their reserves are undesignated. And they have turned in a plan on how they want to use those reserves. And the bottom chart on the right is Charter Oak, showing about 20% worth of undesignated reserves relative to all of their unrestricted net position. So you'll see that most of our reserves have been set aside for specific reasons. However, some of those specific reasons are very general. In other words, when the board policy calls for 5 to 7% set-asides, we are compelled to set aside some amount between those 2 percentages. And when we do, we have been calling them designated, but as we move forward with this new policy, I've been working with the CFOs to define what should be called designated reserves and what should be called undesignated reserves. You can think about this as 2 levels of reserves. Undesignated being more liquid, as it were. Actually, they're all very liquid, but undesignated being more flexible than the designated funds. Now, I want to be clear. The designated funds can be undesignated for emergency uses and other uses as determined by the board and or the institutional presidents. So I want to make sure it's clear that while I call some of these reserves designated, some of those designations are quite flexible. Next slide. So as I said earlier, because of the extant policy that has compelled us to set aside too many dollars, it also has compelled the system office to transfer more than has been necessary. So this $129 million you see on the slide now is what exists in system office reserves. And we do have a plan to spend this down. $89 million, excuse me, $105 million represents the blue slice of this 129, and the yellow is $23 million. The yellow, of course, as before, is undesignated, while the blue are designated. Slide. So these next two slides are going to show a breakdown, a further breakdown of system office reserves. We'll start with the designated reserves of $105 million, almost 106. By far, vast majority of these designated dollars are for debt service relief. $89 billion has been set aside strictly for debt service, and this is the least flexible reserves that we are sitting on. These dollars must be used for capital projects and or debt service. And so the plan that we have to spend these down recognize that fact. Talk about that here in a minute. The yellow slice of this pie represents 1.5% contingency that the board, the current board policy calls for. That amounts to $10 million. Although this is in the designated slide, the conversations that I'm having with the university and college CFOs, we determined that this is likely to be undesignated. So these are flexible dollars that we will use for investments. The red slice represents $6.7 million of accrued compensated absences. Accrued compensated absences are monies that we set aside in preparation for employees leaving our employ, and then their sick, their accumulated sick, accumulated vacation, and personal days will get paid out to them when they leave the organization. And so it is incumbent upon us to make sure that funds are available for employees that leave us. This is a designated area, but one of the concerns I have here that the new policy corrects is that the current policy calls for the universities and the colleges to set aside funds for ACA, accrued compensated absences, and it also calls for the system office to set aside ACA for the entire system. And so that is duplicative. So while the universities have set aside what they need for theirs, the system office has set aside the same for the universities and the colleges, which duplicates the ACA set aside across the system. So this $6.7 million that I'm showing here will be considered undesignated and thereby flexible for investment. Slide. This slide explains the source of the $23 million in undesignated funds. The sources come in there are four sources. Some years ago, this body asked for set-asides for BOR initiatives. I'm not sure what they did with those funds, but they have with other funds that they may have collected. But as of now, that initiative has accumulated $9 million. Those are flexible funds we can invest.
Would,
Yes, sir.
point of clarification, this BOR initiative, my understanding that this was started in 2009,
This goes back a ways, sir.
and it was a steady buildup, and now we're at 9 million.
That's correct.
So it's not anybody here that is set aside money. This is a legacy moment, so to say.
The legacy moment, you're right, Mr. Chair, called for about $600,000 per year to be set aside. And so you can imagine
At 15
how many
years,
years
15, yeah.
it takes to
Yep.
showing off your math skills. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
The $4.7 million is another source. These are dollars that the state provided for us to help support the new building inspector of the state. And of course, we have many of the state's buildings with our campuses across the state. So these are dollars that have been left over a number of years for this purpose. Again, they are flexible, they are available. $7.1 million represents holdback funds. We would get various extra dollars from the state that were previously held back. So we have $7 million of those kind of dollars, and then $2.3 million of just savings from the transfers from the universities. So this $23 million is wholly flexible for investment in whatever way the board so chooses. Slide. So we are proposing to use $50 million of the system office reserves. Again, the system office reserves are about 105. We're proposing to use 50 million. In FY26, we want to use 30 million to provide debt service relief to the universities. This would come out of the designated funds, the $89 million of the debt service fund. So $89 million certainly would be about 3 years of debt service. If you recall, debt service, annual debt service is about 30 million a year. That 89 would cover about 3 years. We are only proposing to cover 1 year of relief.
And the 30 million only goes to our 4 regional institutions, right?
That's correct.
That gets parceled out to the 4.
The
And then,
regional universities are the only ones that participate in debt service.
and then
because
going
they're dorms
forward,
and garages.
right, and then going forward in the budgeting process, they won't have to spend this like amount into their budget to send into the system office. So there's a,
Not quite, sir. They will continue to transfer funds to system office. We still have some $270 million of outstanding debt. So they will still have to make debt payments. This is just 1 year in which we will provide relief to buy down, to draw down the system reserves.
Okay.
And there's a methodology. General Counsel Bufkin and I worked with the Treasurer's Office and with Chifa to try to develop a methodology that they would accept for this relief, this $30 million worth of relief. So what we will do is to continue to take transfers from the universities, but we will seek board approval in June. When we seek your approval for the spending plans, we will seek your approval to withdraw $30 million from the STIF account to allocate to the universities, in effect, to return their transfers for that fiscal year. So that will be a net zero impact on the universities, freeing up debt service for them to have to address their deficits, to make their own investments, and to deal with whatever they choose.
And all of the, and all the universities don't necessarily have the same amount of debt service.
That's
But we're
correct.
go- But we're going to try and make sure what's fair for one is fair across the board.
So, we have 2 large universities in Central Connecticut State and Southern Connecticut State.
Correct.
And 2 smaller universities in Eastern and Western. So their levels of debt service will be quite a bit different. So I believe it's $10 million at Central or so, while it's less at all of the other universities, less so at Southern. Southern, I believe, is around 7 or 8 million.
Darlene? Regent Casamento?
It's based on amounts paid by students. So figuring out how to apportion the surplus, you could easily tie back to what the contributions were by institution. So really the number of students and whether they're full-time, part-time, in-state, out-of-state will drive the accumulation of those funds. Second, I just want to highlight, make sure it doesn't get lost, is these funds that are paid for with Chifa are to help support auxiliary buildings, revenue generating buildings such as dormitories and parking garages. And so I think it's wonderful to figure out a way to put the money to use that makes sense. But the issuing of bonds to support the universities and these revenue generating buildings is a really important part of keeping the campuses up in the way that students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Casamento. In regards to allocating the resources by students, we will do that through a distribution model. Actually, we can tie it back directly to the payments they have collected. So the distribution model is not relevant here, but as it relates to the chief of bonding, certainly we have not gone to market in the past since the pandemic. And it's because of the pandemic that kind of delayed from the last few years, maybe not the last year or two since I've been the CFO, but certainly since the pandemic, We've just not gone to market because of the challenges associated with that aftermath. But certainly, I think you are correct. Keith and I are working on a new plan for a bond schedule. And that we will have to work closely with the regents to determine what those priorities are for bonding going forward. But I hear you loud and clear, and we will certainly get back to that bonding schedule. Let's see. So we talked about the 30 million being debt service relief for the universities, $10 million in FY26 and $10 million in FY27 represent the remainder of the $50 million that we would use for investments. I've kept this number general so that the board can determine what the appropriate investments of those dollars can be. Next slide, please. So in summary, at the system office, we started, we are sitting on about 129 million right now. We are proposing to spend 50 million of those reserves. That would leave us with 79 million. Now let me explain why it has to stop there. Of the 79 million, there are 4 components that I can barely see, so I will turn to my own notes. But the blue pie slice is for debt reserves. What we want to do is maintain $30 million in our reserves as debt coverage. Now, that will represent 2 times debt coverage. 1 time debt coverage is the SCARF funds. SCARF is the Special Capital Reserve Fund that is held by the treasurer. That is only touched in the case of default. So it should never be touched. There's about $29 million, almost $30 million in that fund. That represents 1 time coverage of an annual debt payment. 2 times coverage is what I'm proposing that we maintain here at System Office in reserves of $30 million. So 30 million in the SCARF, 30 million in the STIF. I know these acronyms are crazy, but that's what they're called. But it's 2 accounts that would hold 30 million each. That represents 2 times the $30 million annual debt payment. The magenta slice of the pie is $25 million for deferred maintenance. We've had $25 million held up because of some challenges we had with Chifa that we have now freed up. And so those dollars are now free, and we are planning to use those for a deferred maintenance schedule that we have had all along, but we will now start to implement those deferred maintenance projects. The green slice and the yellow slice represent the remaining dollars that are very flexible for use at the system office. The yellow says on the slide contingency, and then the green says a banner renewal. What I am proposing, and we can have further conversations about this, is to use the remainder of system office dollars, the green and the yellow slice, for not only banner implementation, but also for the purchase of a procurement tool called Jagger. Banner will cost us about $15 million. Jagger will cost us about $4 million. Banner implementation is Banner, if you're not aware, Banner is our enterprise resource management, a resource planning system. This is what we use. This is where all the student information is held. This is where all our financial management information is held. Each of our institutions has one, and we are renewing that contract to be effective July 1 this summer. And so there are lots of costs that come with Banner, but these costs that I'm showing you here from System Office would only cover the implementation costs for that. The institutions already have budgets for their annual service costs for these systems, and they will continue to pay those annual service costs, but the System Office, I am proposing to pay for the implementation costs because it will be quite large and quite involved. So that's what I have for system reserves. Happy to take your questions.
Just one comment, if I might, Lloyd.
Sir.
One of the things we talked about was using some of those extra dollars that we have. I say extra, nothing's extra, but the dollars that are there that are not designated for student aid also.
So whether for student aid, that could be done using system office dollars if you choose to use some of the yellow for that purpose. Or, forgive me, presidents, but the institutional reserves could also be used for that purpose. Some of our institutions already do quite well in providing institutional aid to their students. I suggested that as a way to help lift our retention rates up. It is my understanding from the research that retention rates were impacted by financial and non-financial barriers. We can address the financial barriers with the reserves that we have to some extent.
Questions for Lloyd?
Sir, just go ahead, Regent Porth.
Thank you. A question and then a comment. So is it accurate to say that the $50 million in debt relief that will go to the institutions will be spent on capital projects to benefit the students? Is that accurate?
Yes, the capital projects that the universities engage in are all beneficial to students, whether it's for upgrading their dormitory facilities, whether it's for upgrading their classroom or their student service facilities. It all benefits students. It's $30 million that will be provided for debt service relief. Debt service provides projects for the students and the campus writ large, the respective campuses writ large, but we are providing $30 million simply to relieve them of that year's debt service. And that will help them do more for our students on their respective campuses.
And one quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favor of having a fuller discussion on using undesignated reserves for student aid, student support. Thanks.
Yeah, I just thank you for your comments and question. I just would like to make a, Regent Yang, you go first.
The reserves today, right? Okay, right. So this is just a proposal on that. Okay, this is informational for now, right? And we plan to vote on it in June.
We'll talk about the fund balance policy after the SIP presentation.
Okay, in that case, I have no comments.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment after going through some really deep dives on this. And this is really our balance sheet where all this sits. It's not one account with 635 million. It's actually 14 accounts. There's a system office, there's 6 institutions, there's a designated account and undesignated. And within the designated, there's a multiple of contractual obligations, policy obligations, and governance obligations. So this is a bit of a journey. This isn't a final point to say we're going to do this and step away. This is a journey. And then a lot of the reserves are controlled by the institutions. And so it's not the board to seeking to create one bucket here. It's to understand what we can do to facilitate outcomes at our institutions for our students and faculty. That's the goal. But it's going to be a multi-step process to get there.
Appreciate you mentioning that, Mr. Chair. Too many times people ask me, how in the world did you get that many dollars? So we got 6 institutions. So 6 institutions across this great state of ours. I think it wouldn't seem so large if you think of it in those terms. But certainly at each institution, in addition to at the system office, there are multiple accounts for different purposes.
I have a question to not be answered today, but before we have the next discussion, just a better understanding of the benefit of the investment in the system. What are we proposing that will do for us, whether it's in terms of greater data, greater accuracy, efficiency? I know it's important to invest in systems, would just like to understand a little bit more about the particular recommendation.
Other comments, please?
Other comments? Not.
Oh, it's not. Yeah, this is just not to be answered today, but I don't want to forget one of the issues that, that our student representatives, our student regents mentioned about the one that stuck with me, upgrading of technology on the campus. And just, I would like to understand better how that is managed across the 6 institutions and sort of where those funds would be coming from.
Other comments? Not loud enough? Okay, any other comments? If not, then we'll move on to the next item is a report on the social impact partners on the political investments. With that, I will call on Chris Rivers.
Thank you. And thank you for the time. If we can go ahead and pull up the slides. And as the slides are coming up, I just want to preview what we're going to be talking about today. And it's basically about 18 months ago, Social Impact Partners started working with CSU to really try to understand systemically across all of CSU what's going well, what's not going well, and what are the real opportunities to excel. So 18 months ago, when we first sat down with Chancellor Chang and we launched this effort, we really wanted to understand it from a student journey perspective. And what we're going to share with you today is the absolute wave tops of what we learned and what our recommendations are for the entire system. Now, there's going to be a lot more work to be done to implement these recommendations in the future, but what we would try to do for every recommendation is give you the logical thread of what's the problem, what's the solution, about how much do we think it would pilot in order to prove the efficacy of it for students, to really prove out the cost assumptions we have in our models, and what would be the economic benefit when you do these investments and we did that as an honesty assessment on ourselves to make sure everything we're recommending, make sure the investment makes sense. And so that's what we're going to walk through today. If we can jump to the next slide. So before we get into the problems and the solutions and the costs, I just want to take a moment and really put at the forefront what we believe CSU is here to do, and that's to serve students. And we also understand, because several members of the team are alums of CSU in some way, shape, or form, including myself, that CSU serves a lot of students. It is meant to be the most accessible and quality education we can provide. And that puts CSU in a sort of unique position in a state that's very crowded in higher education, broadly speaking. And so it would make sense to see things like financial aid and whatnot that we'll talk about momentarily as key solutions that other institutions may not necessarily have to grapple with as much because of the sort of unique student body that CSU is here to serve. Next slide, please. Our process that we really went on over the last 18 months is to have a Project North Star that is really looking at the strategic priorities that serves all the stakeholders, but primarily the students first and foremost, faculty, staff, their families, employers, and the state at large. We really did this through 2 different ways. We did a deep dive in data to understand along a framework that we adopted very early on what is driving key parts of the student journey. We launched a pretty massive and quick stakeholder engagement process where we met with over 600 stakeholders throughout the entire system and outside the system to understand the perception of what is driving the student journey. And that really arrives us at what we believe are our recommendations to the Board of Regents for what should be priorities moving forward and to create a really strong investment case. We were excited to do this work pro bono. That may sound weird to some people who listen to this. At the end of the day, Social Impact Partners really believes our entire mission as a nonprofit is to close the economic gap here in the state of Connecticut. And we fundamentally believe to our core that access to quality higher education is a huge part of that puzzle. So our 2 missions align, which is why we're doing this work pro bono. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here's the framework that we really went on. It seems really simple, but I think it's relatively profound when you really circle in on what is the student journey, what is really driving enrollment from both a data and perception-based perspective, what's keeping students in the system once they choose to enroll in our schools, what's getting them over the finish line to completion, and ultimately what's the positive outcomes of their credentials once they earn them. Our key takeaway here is that there are both challenges and real opportunities to improve across this entire student journey. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Rob, and you'll hear a little bit from everyone on our team who has been leading this work. Rob has been leading this sort of data analytics part of this.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to keep my notes here because I don't think I can read all of those slides on this WebEx. So let's start with enrollment. From 2019 to 2023, when we look at fall first-time enrollment, we can see that CSCU is down about 14%, and CT State is down about 11%. By contrast, UConn's main campus is up 16%, and even the private colleges, which in this case, those colleges have also seen gains. This is, of course, a real threat to CSCU's long-term sustainability. And a few key reasons stand out. First of all, we should acknowledge that Connecticut is seeing a decline in the college-age population. However, that's not necessarily a population cliff. Moderate decline, and other institutions have seen. I don't think that's a major driver. Second, when we look at statewide tuition rates and statewide financial aid, Connecticut itself has some of the highest tuition and some of the lowest state financial. That could be affecting the first time. We've also heard in some of our stakeholder engagement with the students that there's not always a clear enough and a strong enough value proposition at CSCU. And finally, the state of Connecticut does have unusually strong private options. So those are. So ultimately, this is creating a bigger challenge from the get-go. So as we has also been mentioned previously, talking financial aid and some of those challenges. If you look across the retention rates at state and CSUs, notice that too many students start their education but not complete. At the two-year level, only about 17% of CT State students graduate within 3 years, and this is well behind peers. And at the four-year levels, we only see about 50% of the CSU students graduating within, compared to and even 74% at private comparables within the state. So looking at some of the drivers for that, we do believe that one of the strongest drivers in the CT State challenge is the mix. CT State has a lot higher part-time student mix compared to other peers like New England, New York. And the part-time students, obviously facing more challenges, do graduate at a lower rate. 4 years, CT State enrolls more lower income students than some of its peers. And this is, but we believe that within, CSUs, barriers graduating and completing their education, that also impacts. Ultimately, when we look at closing these gaps, we really need to address the student supports and find areas to invest in addition to improving the enrollment. Slide, please. So finally, looking at outcomes, and in this case, we focused outcomes on the 5-year median salary of graduates. So this is very much focused on kind of economic. We can see that 5 years after graduation at CT State, the CT State associate's degree holders earn about 1,000 less than associate degree holders from private two-year colleges within the state of Connecticut. And on the four-year side, CSU graduates $12,000 less than UConn grads and about $7,000 less than. Of course, that compounds over time. Investment opportunities around sort of the economic impact and the earnings potential. So a couple of the reasons that I'm going to focus on here include at CSCU, there are fewer graduates in what we've defined as high demand and high paying peers that we look at within the state. In addition to that, and kind of the flip side of that, CSCU graduates more students in general study programs, which of course, if we look at an economic earnings up, and it might increase. And finally, when we've assessed peers, particularly in UConn, I've seen that there are more investments going on in student supports, career advising services, externships, and the like at other schools, which does encourage greater career outcomes. I'd say that the bright spot, when we look at some of the programs that CT State has invested in, such as manufacturing, and there have been investments in career-oriented, better growth and economic outputs. Definitely bright spots there, and there's more areas. Slide, please. So after we completed this qualitative and quantitative research, we identified 5 key areas to invest in. Experience and fast track opportunities. So for the first one, I'll turn it to my colleague Nebs, who will walk you through that opportunity.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nabiyu Daniel. I'm a part of the analytics team at Social Impact Partners. And my focus for this project was really looking at how Connecticut as a whole can look to expand early college within our state. If you go to the next slide, the recommendations that you'll see are really intended to be statewide recommendations, but we believe that the first 2 years can be focused on the CSCU. So the pilot phase should really be something that CSCU is able to do. As Chairman or Board Member Bloom mentioned, early college really allows high school students to take college courses during their high school experience, start earning college credits as early as 9th and 10th grade, all the way up to 12th grade. And these courses can go on to be transferred into their colleges. These courses can be taught by a professor, or they can be taught by an accredited high school teacher. And this mixed delivery, mixed modality delivery is really crucial to ensuring that there's equitable access, particularly for our rural students. Connecticut has been doing early college or dual enrollment for about 70 years, particularly at UConn. So we're really well versed in this, but our community colleges tend to really lag behind when we compare them to other states. Connecticut community colleges rank near the bottom in terms of dual enrollment participation. We think this can change. What our team really did was we started by doing a landscape analysis that looked at states like Oregon, Colorado, and Maine to really see how this program works. But we also spoke to internal faculty and members of the CSU systems team to really understand how these programs are currently being delivered. And what we found is that there's a proven positive correlation in terms of college attendance, retention, preparedness, and job placement. And this was especially true for our low-income and underrepresented students. Based on this analysis, this landscape analysis, we developed a model that really looks to increase Connecticut's participation, or Connecticut students' participation in dual enrollment. Currently, it's about 12% of Connecticut high school students, or about 20,000 out of the 161,000 students, take some sort of dual enrollment credits. We think this can increase. We think Connecticut needs to make a bolder approach and setting a higher target of about 25% of all high school students earning some sort of college credit before they graduate high school. That's about 40,000 students. But we think this can only be done through a centralized and systematized approach. So there needs to be significant buy-in, not just from CT State and CSCU, also from the state as a whole, and also key players like State Department of Education and the high school partners. We used Columbia's community college research to really determine our cost basis and cost assumptions. And we developed a model that looked at what a pilot year would look like and what it would also look like to really expand this out to the entire state. In the pilot year, so in the first 2 years, we think CT State and CSCU can reach an additional 2,000 students in the first year and around 7,500 students in the second year. And that would cost the state around $11 million. To fully scale this out and reach that target of about 40,000 students earning some sort of credit within 5 to 6 years, that would cost the state around $74 million. In addition to looking at the cost of this and the different modality mixes, what we also did was look at the economic benefit this would generate to the students, but also to the state. This looked at things like increase in lifetime earnings, increase in graduation rates, but also increase in socioeconomic benefits. So looking at things like reduced incarceration rates, reduced reliance on social services as well. And what we found is that that initial investment of about $11 to $12 million in the first 2 years would net the individuals and the state around $160 million. And for the annual investment of about $74 million, you're looking at an economic net benefit of about $476 million. Again, we really believe that expanding early college is only possible in conjunction with all the other recommendations that we're making. So I'm going to pass it on to Tricia to tell you more about the stuff that we are recommending around student success.
Trisha Hyacinth, good afternoon, everyone. I've had the pleasure of leading stakeholder regarding student support. So help students stay on track and get to the finish line with the program we're calling the Accelerated Completion, or ACT. The primary goal of ACT is to move on transitioning part-time students to full-time. ACT is modeled after the City University of New York's ASAP and ASAP and ACE programs, and it provides comprehensive student supports that remove the barriers to full-time enrollment. MDRC, an organization that very well regarded in the world of academia, has proven that comprehensive student supports, like the program that we are recommending, can dramatically improve degree. Two main benefits of ACT include graduation rates, as well as higher transfer rates to four-year school. Some of the key program components of ACT include dedicated staffing. So we're talking about coaches who provide holistic, proactive advising, as well as directors who oversee these coaches, also ensure program fidelity. There are financial incentives that are built into the program to ensure that students are rewarded for meeting certain milestones, whether those milestones are maintaining a certain GPA or obtaining a certain number of credits. As I mentioned before, full-time enrollment is a requirement of ACT, and students would be strongly encouraged, if they're a community college student, to complete within, and if they are a CSU student, to complete within. Important component of the program is also that it uses a cohort model, and we all know, many of us know, that cohorts are really important to help students to feel a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and it reduces isolation and increases peer accountability. We are recommending 3 modifications to CUNY's model. The first is a low advisor to student ratio, talking about 1 advisor coach to 75 students, to ensure that there is opportunities for high touch support. We're building in a robust bridge program to prepare students not only for the rigor of higher ed, but also for an accelerated track. And finally, as Regent noted, students want an affordable education. So we are advocating for state-funded financial support to cover the gap that's left after the needs-based aid. In terms of implementation, we recommend a phased rollout of ACT.
at CT State. And in the first year, we would launch the pilot with 1,250 students, 1,000 of whom would be at CT State. After launching the program, we would then review the outcomes to ensure that the most vulnerable students do not fall through the crack, and modify the program as needed before the second year begins. Costs for the first year of about $4.4 million. Scale the program, and CT State would serve roughly 10,500 students by the sixth year, and the CSUs would serve 1,650 students by year 6, bringing the total number of students who are annually enrolled across all the institutions to 12,150. At full scale, the annual investment that we're predicting, $4.4 million to $35 million, with an economic benefit totaling $129 million. This time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Michael, who co-led the stakeholder engagement work, and he's going to talk a bit about the financial aid recommendation.
Just to add one note about our stakeholder engagement, speak to approximately 300 students. Came to some of this. The first thing is financial aid proposal that we've made. I'm going to recommend an increase in financial aid. Thank you. Is that not? Okay. I just don't want to bend over too much. Because empirically it suggested that enrollment would increase, retention would increase, and ultimately graduation rates would increase as well. We're proposing that you increase it to the level of peer institutions. By comparison, that would amount to $24 million a year of additional financial aid on top of what's being done right now. That amounts to, roughly speaking, about $1,000 per student. Why do this? Well, there's a benefit to the students and there's a benefit to the institution. Estimate would be about 400. And then for CSCU, it would put you more on parity in terms of pricing, and make you more competitive in the admissions. There are a couple of essential complementary activities that should go along with this. The first is that financial aid program at each one of the universities are made to specifics of their institution. Broad brush. Second thing, and I can't emphasize this more strongly as someone who graduated with during graduation, during undergraduate, is that financial literacy and solvent in their futures. So with that, I will turn it over to Danny about career pathways.
As Michael mentioned, my name is Danny Curtis, and I led our work on career pathways. The theme that ran across our conversations with students, top priority for them was getting career ready and landing a good job upon graduation. However, as the data that Rob talked about showed, too few. So to address this challenge, we are recommending the development of innovative career pathways programming. Career Pathways is a program model that positions students for success by creating closer linkages between the classroom and career. When I say innovations, this includes both modifications to existing programs as well as the development of new ones. But either way, making this shift will require additional resources. We know that there are already lots of smart people that have done a lot of thinking around career pathways within the CSU system. So we propose distributing these resources and these funds via a competitive grant process. And in keeping with career pathways design principles, these proposals for grants should be evaluated based on a few criteria. One is the alignment between programs with labor market demand. Another is the development of employer relationships that will lead to not only input into curriculum on which skills and knowledge are necessary for the modern workplace, but also the opportunities to engage in work-based learning, including apprenticeships, internships, capstone projects, et cetera. And also a strengthening and linking of academic and career advising. But this is not an exhaustive list. There are other criteria, including the degree to which these programs enable and promote cross-institution collaboration and the stackability of credentials, as well as the of credit for prior learning. Incorporating these best practices into career pathways models makes real substantial differences for students. As the data in the bottom left hand of this slide shows, when career pathways is done right, it leads to increases in completion rates, higher likelihood that students will land a job within their field of choice upon graduation, and an increase in earnings both in the short term and over their careers. These benefits cannot be realized without additional investment. And as the bottom right-hand side of this slide shows, the details of that investment, a 2-year funding of a pilot will demand $25 million that will go towards program development as well as student support. And then there'll be an annual ongoing grant that will be required that will offer student support and any additional innovation required. And so that is career pathways. Now I will turn it over to my colleague, Alicia, who took the lead on a different career readiness initiative.
I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about a concept we've developed that we're calling the Workforce Development Coalition, which focuses on short-term training, meaning training less than a year. Benefits of short-term training, higher completion rates. The short-term nature of the programming allows students to be more likely to complete than degree-bearing programs, and they do lead to higher earnings. Typically about 10% higher earnings from someone who only has a high school. We know there's already strong programming and resource in place around short-term training at both CT State and the CSUs, and we tap into that. But we're proposing a structure that's going to better bring employers in as well as attract funding. Coalition would be a partnership between CSCU, the Office of Workforce Strategy, the Department of and the Workforce Development Boards, and importantly, employers. We focus on 2 groups of potential students, offering pre-hire training to the underemployed and unemployed, providing them with skills and credentials that they need to get good jobs, higher paying wages, as well as incumbent workers who need additional skills because they have changing job requirements or to progress in their careers. These programs would tie into the pathways that Danny was just talking about through educational pathways, things like stackable credentials. Taking a look at the work that they're doing in Maine at the Harold Alfond Center, which is part of their community college system. In Maine, they've trained 25,000 people through short-term training. They have over 1,700 employer partnerships. And their budget this year is $160 million. That funding comes from the state, from philanthropy, as well as business. And we think we can replicate that type of funding mix here in Connecticut. You see on the right-hand side, the pilot that we're proposing would be the first 2 years at $5 million. The first year would be mostly about building the structure, engaging partners, especially key employers. Year 2 would be continuing the building of that structure and starting the training of up to 1,000 people with a mix of pre-hire training and incumbent worker training. And then years 3 and out, we could train up to 7,500 people. The investment included on this slide, it says $13 million. That's only part of the investment. That would be the state investment. We also expect a philanthropic investment and some employer contributions as well. I'm going to hand it over to Chris to wrap us up.
Next and final slide, please. Walked through a lot of big ideas. We tried to walk you through what we identified as a systemic problem throughout the system, the solutions, and I want to just make sure we end on a note that add it all together, you get to some pretty sizable numbers for an investment, but you also get to very sizable numbers for the net number of students you're helping over their entire lifetimes. We really believe that these are real solutions that can be very successful here in Connecticut. We also believe that there is work to be done to prioritize this and figure out how to do these pilots in a way that have the best chance of success, and that these should be done through pilot stage to really prove out both the efficacy for the students and to really get much better data in terms of the cost to really build out the model, so you know, and the state would know exactly with a lot better resolution than what we have now, what the true cost to scale these programs is to have the maximum benefit. But I'll just end on, we really think that we can change the lives of hundreds of thousands of students in the very near future and for a long time to come. This is a multi-year process. We are happy to continue to work with CSC all throughout this. And there's a whole lot more details and information in the written report that's about 75 pages. With that being said, certainly happy to answer questions either here or if people want to engage offline, certainly happy to take questions offline.
James?
I have a comment, and that is having personal experience with part of your model, which was the student support wraparound services cohort model. When I was running Fairfield County's Community Foundation, we had 2 pilot experiments with Norwalk Community College and Housatonic Community College, where we provided exactly that type of programmatic support. It resulted in a 30% higher retention rate for our community college students. And at Housatonic, we took it one step further and we doubled the 3-year graduation rate during the course of that pilot. That was a collaboration between the institutions and philanthropy. So these models, we actually have experience within our own state that if we apply these types of services that are very student focused, we can really transform and make remarkable change and in the success rate of what we are here to do for our students.
Thank you. Regent Porth?
Thank you. I want to start by saying thank you to Chris and the whole Social Impact Partner team. We're a group of volunteers, smart, widely respected around the state, trying to help all of us make Connecticut's future promising economically and socially. So thank you for that. And I think your report, I hope we can use this report, Chairman Quaid, as a way to reframe how we think about the system and how we move forward so that we can focus on why the CSU system is so important to the state, to the people of the state, to our families, to the state's economy, to the state's businesses, and what the best way is to invest in making it even better for all of those folks. I love your recommendations, and I won't go through them in gory detail again, but I do want to point out that the report also talks about the fact that the students in our system are more likely to be part-time And there are strategies here to move them from part-time to full-time, but also that they're more likely to be older, 25 years or older, come from more modest means than most of the other systems around, and that they're more likely to be the first in their family to go to college. These are things we're all very proud of. And I think, I hope that the recommendations in your report will be focused in a way that will allow us to promote more student success for that population. That's what I think is at the crux of your report and of what can make Connecticut a great place even better. Um, I promise I'm going to wrap this up soon, but this is really, I think it's one of the most important topics we've discussed in a while. Access to dual enrollment, please, let's work together to do more of that. Retention and completion, student support, so important. And Juanita's comments show that. Reduce cost. Please, can we come back to that issue about making this more affordable for people in our state, for our students, and the career pathways could be more. I hope that we can use this report. It's similar to what your charge for us, Mr. Chair, when you began as chairman. Can we please here and throughout the state get people to focus on these ideas, why the system's so important and why the changes, targeted changes in the way we invest and lead to great success for the state, its people. Thanks.
Regent Casimiro.
Thank you. So first I want to thank Social Venture Partners for spending time with me separately to explain some of these models and for presenting this information. I wanted to highlight that in the dual credit, in the governor's proposed budget, House Bill 6869, there is a $7.5 million proposed investment in dual credit programs, which is focused on moving the whole state forward and improving access for students. The second thing I want to highlight for people that may not be aware, to the extent that the leadership team and the board believe that any one of these recommendations or something that they want to advance, OPM would expect a proposal from CSU that incorporates any of these recommendations into their overall strategy and vision for CSU in a financially sustainable way. For people that may not be familiar with deadlines associated with the upcoming budget cycle, current services is due on September 1st, policy options October 1st, and the bonding submittal on or around September 1st. I share that because I know that last year that we had a lot of discussion about the lack of involvement in the board in putting together some of these policies and policy recommendations. And so certainly to the extent that any of these are advanced, OPM certainly looks forward to hearing more about it during the proposal stages.
Your guidance and voice will be instrumental to our success, Regent Casimiro.
Thank you.
Trust me.
And then one last point on the report. Out of fairness to the different types of institutions, I would ask that as the final report is being produced, comparing the outcomes of students at this 2 years versus UConn or an R1, to the extent that we're able to compare like institutions to like institutions, apple to apple comparison, I think that that's, the fairest way to present some of the materials. So thank you.
Fair point. Regent Arlington.
Thank you. Thank you to your team for this presentation. It was very insightful. So I'm going to quickly put on my biochemistry cap, even though I have a business degree. What were some of the social determinants of health and barriers that your team noticed that impacted, the part-time students and their graduation rate? Some things that came to mind is like, how can we expect a student to excel in class when they're hungry? Or if there's a single mom, single dad at home with a sick baby, how are they going to do their homework? So.
Great question, and I'll ask Tricia to fill in any gaps that I may leave. A lot from doing our stakeholder engagement work, what we heard a lot of was a lot of these part-time students having multiple part-time jobs in order to try to make ends meet. And the hour that they could spend in a classroom is really offset by the hour they could spend still earning wage to support their family and whatnot. You have a lot of students that are sleeping in their cars to try to figure out how to make the logistics of arriving at class work. You have a lot of students who may not have cars, who are taking public transportation, which our systems here in Connecticut are not that great at, who are spending hours of their day to get to Canvases because they want to be there in the classroom. You have other students who are partaking in hybrid and online courses at a much higher rate in order to get around it. You have other students who really treat our Canvases here in Connecticut as sanctuaries for their learning. The other thing that we heard from the institutions themselves is every institution that has programs to try to give students access to resources that to overcome the other barriers. There are food pantries, there are access to microloans and a whole bunch of other initiatives. None of those initiatives that we heard of are scaled enough to really meet the demand. I think both from faculty, from administration, everyone wants to be able to do more because the students who are really putting it all on the line to try to figure out how to manage their part-time employment, part-time student, and still have a better future in their mind, deserve more resources in order to. The stories we heard are truly inspirational, but also be painful to listen to that it has to be so inspirational. So there is plenty of need. There's more need than we have resources for right now. And in some of these recommendations, especially around student support, there's a lot of room to customize it to meet the needs at every Canvas, which is also different. Different Canvases serve different, and that's a good thing. But we really just need more resources in order to meet those needs. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'd just like to make a final comment before giving it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I started the week last week at Eastern's graduation, and I ended at Gateway yesterday. And it's just a reflection. We do a lot of things really well. Situationally, I saw a nursing program graduate 88 nurses at Eastern last Monday. Yesterday, I saw a whole cohort of nuclear engineers from Three Rivers who were going down, finishing and going to Electric Boat, starting at $105,000 a year in their job. We do a lot of things well, but if we don't do it at scale, it's not sustainable. And I think as we propose something to OPM, it needs to be at scale so that we can sustain it. Because we can do something short term and do something interesting. We don't want to do something interesting. We want to do something that's important, right? So that's what, what we're looking to do.
Mr. Chair, can I just make I have a microphone here, thank you. And so I've had the pleasure of working with SIP since the very beginning, right? Many conversations, Chris, Michael, conceptualizing, right? We know that more has to happen. We know that more needs to be done. And so I'm deeply appreciative of the work that SIP has put in. You brought in a whole lot of folks. I got a little scared at first. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but you're all friendlies as far as I can tell. So, so thank you. Thank you for the work. It's been deep, it's been rich. It's invited a lot of conversations that are sorely needed for a system like ours and institutions like ours at this critical time. So I just want to say that personally, everything that I've seen and we've talked about, as leaders, right? We know we need to do more for our students. We know that our metrics are not where we would want them to be. And we know that the day-to-day outcomes are not where we would want them to be. So with you on that, I want to make a few comments that are more observations to help kind of continue the conversation, to sharpen, and to make sure we gain as much clarity and balance in that conversation as it moves forward. Okay, and so first I'm going to say that it always makes me a little uncomfortable when we have a conversation about CSCU or any of our institutions and we throw in our flagship and privates into that conversation, right? Because we are not comparing apples to apples. I don't leave it at that, but I want to use a little bit of agnostic data or at least as objective and as agnostic as it can be. And it comes from the Carnegie classification system. When we look at the institutions of the new Carnegie classification system for social and economic mobility, our institutions rank high access and medium earnings, which is just as good as the majority of our private institutions. And most of our private institutions in the flagship, according to the Carnegie classifications, not according to the Cheng classifications, because nobody wants those, our private institutions are low access, they are not serving the students that we serve, and they have high outcomes. Low access, high outcomes. Many of them have access and outcomes that are absolutely commensurate to ours. And so I would argue two things quickly. We are already doing big portions of this work, but we are siloed, we are disaggregated. And to Chair Guay's point, the need to synergize and to scale is absolutely critical. That's the first thing I want to say. Obviously, our funding hurts our ability to offer institutional aid, right? If we had the ability to offer the same levels of institutional aid that our private institutions and our flagship could offer, it would be a very different conversation, right? And so again, I think these are important metrics when we're talking about comparing apples to apples to define what actual success means, and that we're going deep enough to have that conversation. I would say that looking at CSU metrics across the board, when we have community colleges involved, when we have our CSUs, Charter Oak are all involved, again, not even apples to apples within our own system. When we start to pull out the data institution by institution, let's look at Eastern's retention and graduation rates. Let's look at Central's retention and graduation rates, right? We can't have these kind of big buckets that hold everything together, because at the end of the day, I think that does a real disservice and an injustice to the work that's happening at the institutional level. Last thing I'll say, because I know this meeting's running a little long, I would be remiss if I did not note that the ASAP and ACE programs in Governor Hochul's budget in New York State has been funded to make them permanent. So the state has added funding to the SUNY budget and the CUNY budget to make those permanent. That's a state investment that makes it full. Main initiative was launched with a $75 million commitment from the Alfred Foundation. So if there's another slide that shows 75 mil from philanthropy, I would love to see that right now, but maybe that comes later. But I think that is part of our aspirational goal, right? But again, this is not work that is going to come sui generis from our existing budgets, right? We're going to need more, and we really appreciate the work that you're helping us to chart the path with so that we can get there. So thank you. Thank you.
And the goal is to be the best apple. Goal is to be the best apple. In the
Why are we gathered here today?
Ari, go ahead. Back to you.
Was somebody wanting to speak?
With Ari, I think he was.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I guess that does it. Chris, I want to thank you and your team for the presentation. Very interesting, and well worked out. Okay, the last item on the agenda for the finance group is the fund balance policy, which could potentially be a votable item today if you choose so, or we can carry it over to the June meeting if there are major changes that this group feels should be made. And that was the decision that Lloyd and I and Aaron and certainly the chairman agreed upon. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lloyd, and make that presentation, and we'll make that decision as to whether we vote or carry it over until June. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Balducci. So now we'll discuss the fund balance policy. About 45 days ago, the chair asked me to work with the CFOs across the system to develop a new fund balance policy in response to some of the challenges with the growth in our reserves, as I presented earlier. And so what you see starting on page 509 of your very large packet is the draft of the fund balance policy. It's only 5 pages, and I'll walk you through a little bit. The slide summarizes sort of the emphasis of the fund balance policy. The old policy designated specific set-asides for contingency, accrued compensated absences, auxiliaries, and debt service. The old policy, the one we currently operate under, is very specific about its set-asides, and in some cases, too specific about its set-asides. So the guidance that we were given by the board chair was to develop a policy that was simplified, that set the sort of parameters and the boundaries in the right places, and then provided the presidents with a proper level of discretion. So what you will see in the new policy, and I'll walk you through the sections in just a minute, the main part of the new policy sets a 30 to 90-day reserve limits for current unrestricted fund balances. Current unrestricted fund balances you might consider to be those fund balances that were undesignated, okay, that haven't been set aside for specific purposes. These represent largely the 5% contingency bullets that you see in the current policy. The new policy would mandate 1 year of debt coverage, debt service coverage. This is the $30 million that I suggested that we set aside or continue to set aside in the system office reserves, the $30 million. Now that 1 year is not all the debt service that we have or coverage that we have. Remember, we also have 1 year of coverage in the SCARF account, the Special Capital Reserve Fund, that we will not touch. Because if you touch that, you're in default. That's why we have the second set aside, so that if for some reason the universities were in a position where they couldn't make those transfers, we could still make our payment without entering into default. Next item, the bullet that you see on the screen, the policy talks about reporting and monitoring. As I mentioned earlier, fund balances are determined at the end of the fiscal year through audited financial statements. At the end of each, I'll talk about that in a second. What we wanted to do was not wait, have this policy not wait for the end of the year before we saw and monitored. It's too late to monitor it. It would only be a report at the end of the year. We wanted to be able to put some kind of monitoring in the middle of the year. So we're suggesting in the policy that we use the midterm review that we do every single year to also report on fund balances. And usually during the mid-year review, we report on where we are in terms of our operating budgets. We want to also use that time to talk about where we are with our fund balances across the system, institution by institution, as well as at the system office. And finally, the policy really establishes for the first time an enforcement mechanism. The enforcement mechanisms are essentially what happens if our reserves get too low, what happens if our reserves get too high. Too low is below the 30-day threshold, too high is above the 90-day threshold. This is relevant to the unrestricted fund balances. To be clear about let me just walk you through each section of the policy. I'm not sure if you read it or not, but it's got 5 sections. The first section is the introduction, and the introduction basically talks about what we want to do is to establish a consistent framework for all of our 6 institutions within CSCU. That was not true currently. Currently, our policy really only applied to the universities. CT State has its own policy. We want to be able to incorporate all of those elements into a single, consistent, system-wide policy. And so section number 1 talks about that and provides a graphic that helps you understand the elements of the net position. As the chairman mentioned, this is a balance sheet measure. You look at the balance sheet, at the bottom of that balance sheet, it's going to show you a net position. That net position has multiple elements: restricted funds, unrestricted funds, and net investment in our capital. Net investment in our capital is simply our physical capital across the state minus depreciation and debt. Okay, so the second section provides definitions that are relevant to this policy. Those definitions really get specific about what are designated funds, what are undesignated funds, within, and what is a plant fund within the unrestricted fund balance area. Right? I've mentioned designated as those specific set-asides, undesignated or not specific, and then the plant fund really holds the debt service amounts, the debt service coverages. Okay? It also defines restricted funds. Now, please understand that this policy doesn't really get at restricted funds because we do not consider restricted funds reserves. Restricted funds are just that. They are restricted because of external contracts that we have with external bodies, mainly with the federal government and philanthropic grantors on our academic grants. So those cannot be touched. Indeed, some of our universities set aside amounts for their indirect costs associated with delivering on those grants. The third section of the draft policy really is the policy itself. And it has a number of elements to that policy. The first element I've already mentioned sets the 30 and 90-day limits. Don't let your current UMP go too low, below 30 days. Don't let your current UMP get too high, above 90 days worth of spending. It also establishes the one-time debt coverage that I mentioned earlier. Policy will limit presidential discretion at $500,000. This is to say the discretion that the presidents have to take their money from their operating budget and set it aside for one purpose or another that they deem as appropriate for their campuses and the way they need to serve their respective students. Now, that is a limit that has been raised. The current policy sets that limit at $250,000. That level was set maybe 20 years ago. So we want to update that so that the presidents have an appropriate amount of discretion in managing their budgets and their resources and their plans. But everything above $500,000 would require board approval. The policy does include elements that give the chancellor a chance to make approvals outside of cycle, but it also encourages the institutions to the extent that they want to bring requests for designations to the board, they need to do that at regular scheduled meetings like the one we're in now. But certainly there are times when that's not possible, and so the policy provides for the ability to seek approval from the chancellor, approval that would then be ratified by the board at the next regularly scheduled meeting to the extent that the chancellor makes such approvals all cycle. The policy also develops reporting and monitoring requirements, as I said earlier, and the main monitoring element is to add this reporting to our mid-year reporting cycle so that we don't have to wait until the end of the year to understand what our fund balances are. And finally, and this is new, the current policy does not have this, the new policy suggests ways to enforce this policy, which is to say, when an institution finds themselves, or system office, finds ourselves in a position where we have current UMP below 30 days, we need to develop the policy specifies what the president or the chancellor needs to do to remediate that situation. It also provides guidance and enforcement on what should happen if our fund balances exceed 90 days. And that is to say, not all fund balances, but the current fund balances, the current UMP. If it exceeds 90 days, so the policy calls for the president or the chancellor to specify plans that they will engage in to bring fund balance back within compliance of the policy. So all that means is, if you get too low, tell us how you're going to remediate and get your balances back up. If you collect too many reserves, tell us how you're going to use those reserves, because we want to be able to use those in a way that works best for our students. And so that's what we're proposing by way of fund balance policy. If you're comfortable with what you see in the policy, then I believe, Mr. Chair, they can vote today. But if you're not comfortable, if you'd like to see changes, any type of changes, let us know. And we can table today's vote for the June board meeting. But at this point, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions, Regents.
Great. Do we have any comments or questions? I just have one though. When we talked about the fund balance over 90 days, you said either or, the president or the chancellor. I thought it was the president. Is it either or? I couldn't remember that.
It's either or, because we hold reserves here at System Office as well.
Correct.
And indeed, we're holding a great deal of reserves at System Office, and we've talked about how we can remediate that. But under this policy, we would develop a formal report. The chancellor would develop a formal report. Certainly, I would do it on his behalf to say how we can use those dollars to bring the balances back into alignment with the policy. So we don't want to make this just about institutions. We're sitting on dollars too. Sometimes we collect more than we should, and when we do, we should find a way to give it back.
Great, good, thank you. Other comments by other members of the committee? Okay, so I will do this, since there aren't any. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, of course.
On the 500,000 unrestricted that the president has, is there any pre-spending reporting or requirement of any kind? If the president says we're going to spend $500,000 to give every student in the campus 2 cases of peanut butter, that's subject to any kind of prior review or notice or anything?
If it's 500 above, according to the new draft policy, president would have to bring that request, that intention to the board for approval.
Under 500,000.
Under $500,000, the president would have full discretion. However, on something like, something that might be controversial, most presidents are wise enough to bring that to the board, despite the fact that they have the authority.
Point.
Pardon? Well, certainly if the president chose to provide $480,000 worth of additional financial aid, that's not controversial. That would certainly help improve our retention rates and our persistence to graduation. So there are many different ways the presidents can use something just under $500,000 to improve our services to our students.
Great. Okay, thank you. Other comments by other members? Since there doesn't seem to be, what I'm going to do is make a motion to accept this fund balance policy. And I would ask for a second by a member of the committee. Motion made and seconded. No further discussion because we've already had it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's adopted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would turn the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Finance Chair Balducci. Governance Committee Chair James, any report this month?
No report this month.
Thank you so much. HR and Resources, Human Resources and Administration Committee Japanen, any report this month? Thank you so much. Technology Committee Chair Yang, any report this month? Thank you so much. Before I call for a motion to move to executive session, let me first thank all the participants here today. You're too many to name, but it was very appreciated. Let me state the members of the Board of Regents will move to executive session in accordance with 1-200 subsection 6A of the general statute for the purposes of discussing the appointment of an interim chancellor and subsection E regarding personnel search committee. No votes will be taken in executive session. Additionally, there'll be no action or votes by the board following executive session. The only remaining item will be to adjourn this meeting. Chancellor Chang, Jessica Paquette, Adam Joseph, Kara Buffman will be invited into executive session for the second item, as they have testimony or opinion that is pertinent to that matter, which is the Personnel Search Committee, and will be in attendance during the discussion of that item. Therefore, allow me to call for a motion to move to executive session for the purposes I've described above. May I have a motion? Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Please pause the live streaming.